working right now on this sutta called the Agata Pativinaya Sutta, which is about dispelling of anger or ill will or resentment towards other people. And this is part of the factor of right effort on the Noble Eightfold Path, how to get rid of these defilements of the mind. So far we have looked at three types of people. These are the people where there is some good quality to focus on. And the point here is that as long as there is something good to focus on, we should always try to focus on the good. Because this then is the source, the foundation for being able to practice metta. Metta is basically founded on the ability to see the good in other people. If you see the bad in somebody else, it's very hard to have metta towards that person and wish them well. So now we come to the person who is not so good, to put it that way. The first is very hard to see the goodness in, and then there is a different strategy that we can use in this case. And this is how it goes. How, friends, should resentment be removed towards the person whose bodily and verbal behavior are impure, and who does not gain an opening of the mind, placidity of the mind, from time to time? Suppose a sick, afflicted, gravely ill person was traveling along a highway, and the last village behind him and the next village ahead of him were both far away. He would not obtain suitable food and medicine or a qualified attendant. He would not get to meet the leader of the village district. Another man traveling along the highway might see him and arouse sheer compassion, sympathy and tender concern for him, thinking, "Oh, may this man obtain suitable food, suitable medicine, and a qualified attendant. May he get to meet the leader of the village district." For what reason? So that this man does not encounter calamity and disaster right here. So too, when a person's bodily and verbal behavior are impure, and he does not gain from time to time an opening of the mind, placidity of the mind, on that occasion one should arouse sheer compassion, sympathy and tender concern for him, thinking, "Oh, may this venerable one abandon bodily misbehavior and develop good bodily behavior. May he abandon verbal misbehavior and develop good verbal behavior. May he abandon mental misbehavior and develop good mental behavior." For what reason? So that with the breakup of the body, after death, he will not be reborn in the plane of misery, in a bad destination, in the lower world, in hell. In this way, resentment towards that person should be removed. Right? So this is how you look upon somebody who is, you cannot see anything good in them. All you can see is bad qualities, bad speech, bad actions, bad mental states. There's nothing kind of redeeming in this person at all. And the interesting thing is, this person is to be regarded as somebody who is sick, somebody who is ill, somebody who has a grave illness, which will lead to tremendous suffering in the future. If you are gravely ill, but you have no medicine, you have nothing to sort you out, you're heading towards even more suffering. You're heading probably towards your own death. Right? So this is what happens for the ill person. How do you feel when you see somebody who is very ill, somebody who is not helped by anybody else? How do you feel in that case? And usually what you feel a sense of compassion. You want to help that person because they are helpless. There's nothing that they can do for themselves. You have the opportunity to help, so you feel compassion towards that person. So when somebody is very difficult, it's very, very hard to deal with, and you find it you don't know what to do with them. Remember this beautiful way of regarding that person. They are ill. They're heading towards suffering, just as somebody who is tremendously ill. They're heading towards tremendous suffering in this life, and also upon rebirth. And they don't understand that, right? If they understood that they are creating suffering for themselves now and in the future, they wouldn't be doing this. They are blind, they are deluded. So when somebody is that deluded, that they are acting towards themselves as if they are their own enemy, then how do you feel? How can you feel towards that person, you start to feel a sense of compassion. They don't know what they're doing. They are blind. They are completely foolish in the way they act and the way they behave their life. They are destroying their own life and destroying their own future by the way they act. So what you're doing, you're shifting your focus. Instead of thinking about yourself, oh, why do I have to suffer in this person's presence? You're shifting instead and looking at the other person instead, and then by that simple shift of focus, you can have compassion. Instead of thinking about yourself, you're thinking about the other person. So it's a simple little thing, but again, very powerful. So next time you come across somebody who is very, very difficult, just remind yourself they are sick. They are ill, they are moving towards tremendous suffering here. And then you can understand this person much better and have a way of dealing with this kind of situation here. So this is a situation where we give rise to compassion rather than metta, because there isn't anything there you can focus on that really gives rise to metta. So then we have the last person, and this is the truly good person. So this is kind of the inspiring one. So how, friends, should resentment be removed towards the person whose bodily and verbal behavior are pure, and from time to time gains an opening of the mind, placidity of mind? Suppose there were a pond with clear, sweet, cool water, clean with smooth banks, a delightful place shaded by various trees. Then a man might arrive afflicted and oppressed by the heat, weary, thirsty, and parched. Having plunged into the pond, he would bathe and drink, and then after coming out, he would sit and lie down in the shade of a tree right there. So too, when a person's bodily and verbal behavior are pure, and from time to time he gains an opening of the mind, placidity of the mind, on that occasion one should attend to his pure bodily behavior, to his pure verbal behavior, and to the opening of mind, the placidity of mind that he gains from time to time. In this way, resentment towards that person should be removed. Friends, by means of a person who inspires confidence in every way, the mind gains confidence. So that is the fifth person here. And so this is the person who is just saintly in their behavior. This is the samanta pasadika person, the person who inspires confidence in every way. The Pali word for that is samanta pasadika, and that is probably where the Venerable Buddhaghosa, where he got the name for his commentary on the Vinaya from, probably from this particular sutta, samanta pasadika. And of course, what is being said here is that even though somebody might be samanta pasadika, inspiring confidence in every way, it doesn't mean that people don't get upset with them. People still get upset with people like that. Doesn't matter if they're arahant, even at the Buddha, people get angry with the Buddha as well. And you see that both in the suttas and in the Vinaya Pitaka. But of course, in this situation, it is quite easy to abandon that anger and negativity you might find, because there is so much good to focus on. There is a pond with clear, sweet water, right? There's no algae to sweep aside. There's no kind of things that you don't have to kind of focus very narrowly on a few good qualities. You can just plunge into the whole pond because there's so much good qualities to be seen there. Beautiful, sweet, cool, clean water, and it straight away it helps you to abandon all your affliction and oppression by heat, which is the oppression by the defilements, right? The defilements oppress you, and you plunge into the good qualities. Drink of the good qualities, and as you drink of the good qualities, you abandon all the defilements in the mind. And then not only doing that, but afterwards, when you come out, you sit down in the shade of a tree, right? So this person is so delightful. It's like you're sitting in the shade of that person. You stay in their presence, and you feel cool, and you feel that this the oppression is alleviated as you are there in their presence. And this is something that you see in the suttas. You see the way that the arahants, for example, are described in the suttas. And one of the things that it says is that even just seeing an arahant in the world is a great blessing. Just seeing an arahant is a great blessing here. Right? Why is that? Why is it a great blessing to see an arahant? Are we not supposed to hear the teachings? And I think the reason is when you see somebody who is special, because remember your inner state of mind. It shows in your conduct. This is one of the things the Buddha always says in the Vimamsaka Sutta. Investigate me. Look at me. Do you see any defilements? Do you see any problems? The inner state of mind is reflected in a person's conduct. So when you see an arahant, when you see somebody, you think, wow, this person is different. Look at this behavior. It is even. It is consistent. It is kind of coherent. There's consistency of metta. There's no anger there. There's no delusion. There's a sense of peace, a sense of kindness, which is always present in a person like that. And when you see that, you recognize there's something different here, something special. And that gives you a sense of, I suppose, hope. A hope that there is something powerful in this world, something more, something that you also can aspire to, right? You see something which is different from normal human beings. And that is why just seeing an arahant, right? Seeing the Buddha, right? Some people, they saw the Buddha and they were just awestruck. Wow, there's something special about this person. And this is the power of seeing the arahant. And very often you see in the suttas the gradual training or the gradual path of practice. It starts off by seeing somebody special. Then you go to them and you pay respects to them, right? And then you listen to the Dhamma, and then it takes off from there. Seeing is believing, as they say in English, and this is very much true in this particular case. So it's very useful, it's very important that we have examples in the present day as well of people who practice in the right way and who gain the results. Because one thing is reading in the sutta, but when you read about these things, it can often seem very dry. It's like history, right? This happened 2,500 years ago. It all sounds very good, but it doesn't really touch the heart because it's not tangible. You can't grasp it. It's just theory. It's on a piece of paper. But when you see it, when you see the results of that practice for yourself, it becomes tangible and it touches your heart in a much more direct way. And this is the power of seeing people like this, seeing the Aryas, and especially seeing the Arahants because of their complete purification. So this is what this is about, seeing the Arahants in the world and how this kind of calms you down and makes you placid and makes you purify yourself. You plunge into those good qualities and you drink from that. And then it says, it is by means of this person who inspires confidence in every way, the samanta pasarika person, the mind gains confidence. That's when you gain confidence, when you see these things. These, friends, are the 5 ways of removing resentment, by means of which a bhikkhu can entirely remove resentment towards whomever it has arisen. So remember this. I think this is an important thing to recall, this idea that it is really through practice that we become examples in the world, become examples for others. Teaching or preaching is fine, but unless the practice is there, it doesn't really go all that deep. It is the people, you will notice that when people talk about Dhamma, and they often talk about those people who are special. And we talk about those because we recognize there's something powerful there. So if you want to be a blessing for Buddhism yourself, and you want to do what is good in the world, and you really want to be an inspiration for other people, this is what you have to do. You have to fulfill all the steps of the gradual training. Become an arahant yourself, or at least a sotapanna, right? The very least, but ideal an arahant. And then that is when you really become a blessing for the world. And then you fulfill the status of a bhikkhu or a bhikkhuni fully when you practice in this way. Okay. So that is the sutta on removing resentment and anger. And then I have a short extract from the simile of cloth. It's the Vat Upama Sutta from the Majjhima Nikaya, quite a very well-known sutta. And this is just very briefly the standard sutta description on developing the Brahma Viharas. And I included that because once you abandon the ill will in the towards other people, that is when developing the Brahma Viharas become possible. So just very briefly, just to read that, just to maybe reflect on it very, very briefly before we move on. He abides, pervading one quarter with a mind imbued with loving kindness, metta. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above, below, around and everywhere, and to all as to himself. He abides, pervading the all-encompassing world with a mind imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. He abides, pervading one quarter with a mind imbued with compassion, karuna, with a mind imbued with altruistic joy, mudita, and with a mind imbued with equanimity, upekkha. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above, below, around and everywhere, and to all as to himself, he abides, pervading the all-encompassing world with a mind imbued with equanimity, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. So that is the ideal of loving kindness. Once you get loving kindness to this level, this is like the level where you have very deep samadhi, roughly equivalent to jhana states, but through the Brahmaviharas instead, right? And the idea here is that you spread out this loving kindness without any boundaries, without any limits. And there is a stage sometimes talked about in the developing of the Brahma Viharas, which is called precisely the breaking through of all the limitations, all the boundaries, at the point of which you include everyone, all human beings, all animals, and all beings in the whole world. There's no limit anymore. There's not like, I love everybody except for this one. I really don't like this one. Can't take him in. There comes a point when even that one, right, your worst enemy, gets included in the loving kindness. And that is when it becomes very, very powerful. And this beautiful way it is phrased here, right? You do it, you pervade the different quarters. These are like the cardinal directions, the north, south, east, west. So you pervade each quarter at the time, and then above and below and around and everywhere, to all as to himself. Somebody was asking the other day about practicing metta and how when you kind of spread it out to everywhere around the world, what about yourself? Shouldn't yourself also be included? And here it is, right? To all as to himself. Sabbattataya. Sabbattataya is sabba and atta together, self and all. So you are included as well. If you have metta without boundaries to everywhere, then of course you are part of that. And these beautiful words here, abundant, vipula, exalted, mahagata. Mahagata, maha means great, right? Like something like gone great or achieved to greatness. Immeasurable, appamana. No, pamana is a limit. It's a limitation. This is without limits. It just goes out and out. No boundaries, no end point of this one. And there's no hostility and no ill will left at all in this. So remember, to be able to do this, to be able to have this kind of metta, first of all we have to abandon any problems in the mind. If you're going to have metta towards somebody, the first thing is you have to be able to see the good qualities in that person. This is the first thing. And this is good to remember that, because sometimes when we start a metta meditation, we might start with focusing on people straight away, wishing, may you be well, may you be happy. But if we can prepare the ground a little bit by first of all just reminding ourselves of all those good qualities, right? Remembering the compassion, the kindness, the generosity of this person. What do these things mean? So bring up that state inside of yourself, what these things actually mean in terms of felt experience. What does it feel like? And then project that into the other person. Remind yourself that this person maybe has this to a much higher degree than you can even imagine, especially if they are very developed in meditation, right? and you project that into the other person, and then you see them in such a way that you can actually see those qualities in them. You see them with a very peaceful and kindly expression on their face, right? And then you can see that, and then once you have this beautiful feeling about this other person, then you can say, you have to mean these things. It has to come from your heart. There has to be a real intention there. May you be happy, may you be well. And when you mean that, and you see the beauty of the person, then that is when this beautiful feeling of kindness, metta is really just kindness, this feeling of kindness arises, and you have this incredible powerful sense of kindness directed towards the other person. And once it takes hold, then you can start. Once that kind of you get rise to that feeling, it means that the ill will, the vyapada, all the negative states of mind are kind of far away. And because they're far away, it is relatively easy then to actually give out that metta, that kindness to other beings as well. So you move away from that person, and then you can maybe just take the directions, the cardinal directions as it does here, and just spread the metta to the cardinal directions, reminding yourself that there are so many good people in this world, so many good beings. Sometimes we forget that when we read too much the newspaper or watch too much television. We think the world is a bad place. But actually, there's so many kind people in the world. When we think about the daily interactions we have with ordinary people, we know that there is a lot of kindness in the world. When we read kind of abstract stories from far away somewhere, that's when it feels like there is so much badness going on. So concentrate on your daily interactions. That is actually the reality. The stuff you see in the paper is kind of almost unreal. It's like you're accumulating, you're putting together all the badness in the world, right, in a few pages. And that, of course, is not real. That is just a distortion of what things actually are like. So, this is what you do, and you start off with metta, then you move on to compassion, right? There is a hierarchy here as well. Then there is mudita, and then finally upekkha is the highest one of these. So get your metta going first of all, and that takes a lot of patience and practice on its own right, and then you can move on to the other ones. It was interesting in one of the interviews the other day, somebody said to me, I'm doing metta meditation, but I would like to move on to anapanasati here. And I got this feeling that this person felt that maybe anapanasati was a kind of better practice. But please don't think like that. Don't think that anapanasati is kind of the practice you have to do and metta is no good. It is whatever works for you which is the good thing. If you get good results from practicing metta, that's wonderful. Keep on doing the metta. Please try anapanasati as well if you like. I'm not discouraging you from practicing anapanasati, but you may find that metta works better for you. In which case, please do metta. It is not an inferior practice at all. It really depends on what works for you and what actually, how you're able to abandon problems and give rise to wholesome states of mind. Okay, so that was just very briefly about metta, and now we come to different aspects of meditation. These are like contemplations in a sense. We're still dealing with right effort. All of this is about abandoning defilements in the mind, right? And these are 5 ways of reflecting that give rise to the abandoning of defilements. And these are very, very useful reflections. And what is powerful about them is that the Buddha specifically says this is to be done by everybody, by monastics, also by lay people. Everybody should do these kind of reflections. So, this is how it goes. And this is quite a well-known sutta, so it's quite likely you will have heard this one before. Because there are these 5 themes that should often be reflected upon by a woman or a man, by a householder or one gone forth. What 5? A woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth should often reflect thus: I am subject to old age. I am not exempt from old age. A woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth should often reflect thus: I am subject to illness. I am not exempt from illness. A woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, should often reflect thus: I am subject to death, I am not exempt from death. A woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, should often reflect thus: I must be parted and separated from everyone and everything dear and agreeable to me. A woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, should often reflect thus: I am the owner of my karma, the heir of my karma. I have karma as my origin, karma as my relative, karma as my resort. I will be the heir of whatever karma, good or bad, that I do. So that is the summary of that sutta, and now let us look at each one of these in a bit more detail. For the sake of what benefit should a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, often reflect thus: I am subject to old age, I am not exempt from old age. In their youth, beings are intoxicated with their youth, and when they are intoxicated with their youth, they engage in misconduct by body, speech, and mind. But when one often reflects upon this theme, the intoxication with youth is either completely abandoned or diminished. It is for the sake of this benefit that a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, should often reflect thus: I am subject to old age, I am not exempt from old age. So you can see here the idea is to clear the mind from what here is called an intoxication. And intoxication is basically a defilement of the mind. It's a bit like you are drunk, right? If you drink too much alcohol, you get intoxicated. You don't know the difference between up and down and left and right anymore. Certainly not between what is good and what is bad. And you do all kinds of crazy things as a consequence. But in Buddhism, there are many types of intoxications. And being drunk is only one of them. Other types of intoxications is it being intoxicated with sensual pleasures. You lose yourself in sensual pleasures, and you forget again what is the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do, because you cannot see things clearly anymore. But these things are also intoxications. The idea that you feel, I am young, right? I can go out into the world. I am strong, right? When you're young, you're still very strong. You're very fit. You can do whatever you like in the world, or so you think. And then you lose yourself. You forget that the other side of the coin of youth is old age. The other side of the coin is always there. And then because of that intoxication, you misconduct yourself in body, speech, and mind. And you heap up lots of bad karma. And then when eventually you get old and you die, you think, wow, I really wasted that youth. Why did I spend the youth so badly? So the idea here is to remember that the other side of the coin is old age. If you are young, the whole idea of youth only exists in relation to old age. If you're young, you must be old. If you're old, you have been young. These things always go together. And the sooner you can kind of get that into your head, that this is the case, the less kind of intoxicated you are by the idea of being strong and young and kind of ready to take on the world. That's what you feel like when you are young. So you abandon that. You remember your old age. So to see whether you have, it seems obvious, right? You would think everybody would know this, but of course we don't, because there's layers and layers of depth to these kind of contemplations. So one way to check out whether you have actually achieved this is to see how do you feel in the presence of somebody who is very, very old. When somebody is really old, right? I visited somebody very old when I was in Colombo, and this woman, she had cancer. She was just lying on her bed. She couldn't get up. She couldn't do anything. She could speak a little bit, but not all that much. And she looked quite decrepit. You know, she was obviously coming to the very end of her life. And when you see a person like that, you know, very, very old, they can barely move anymore, they can barely do anything. Other people have to dress them and to look after all your bodily functions to make sure that you are kind of sorted out. How do you feel? Do you feel, that's me in the future? Or do you feel a little bit kind of averse to that? Do you find it a little bit difficult to bear when that? Do you feel a bit humiliated and ashamed, or a bit kind of difficult in bearing that? And that is how you know whether you are, whether you are at ease with that. If you're at ease with that, and you can kind of see yourself in the same situation, and it doesn't bother you too much that you also will end up in that situation, then you are basically okay. And this is how the Buddha explains his own thinking before he ordained, that he realized, because he is getting old as well, there's no way that he should be disgusted or humiliated by old age when he sees that. So look at that and see how you feel about old age. Remember, it's already inside of you. Old age is already here, right? If you are young, it's already part of you. Can you feel that old age inside of you? It's there. It will come out. It's just waiting to come out. And one day, before you know it, you too will be old. Each one of us will be old. And remember that. And when you remember that, it doesn't come as a surprise when it actually happens. Make it real. Feel it, that it's already inside of you. One of the ladies who is here, she told me at the interview time that when she was, I can't remember exactly when it was, a while ago anyway, she was doing some meditation practice or something like that, or she was on a retreat or something. And she said that she got this nimitta of herself, this image of herself in her mind. And she saw herself when she was 8 or 9 years old, right? This young, very pretty girl, 8 or 9 years old. And then suddenly that image changed into seeing herself being absolutely, completely, utterly old as you can possibly get, completely decrepit, everything falling apart, the nose crooked, the body bent over, as ugly as you can possibly imagine yourself. That's what she said. And she said, when that happened, afterwards, I felt this bliss. My mind became peaceful. I felt this incredible, powerful meditation afterwards. And she asked me, why is that? And of course, the reason why that is because you have taken this old age contemplation to its limit, right? You have really seen something directly in your face. You're facing your own old age. And when you see the nature of the body so clearly, you let go. Right? You let go. You can't hold on to that anymore. You have seen that the body is not worth holding on to. And when you let go of the body in a very powerful way like that, you feel peaceful. Very peaceful. And your meditation takes off. And you get these nimittas and all these kind of things as a consequence. So thank you for that story. That was a very nice story that you told her. And this is the potential for this kind of contemplation. If you take it fully and you realize the nature of this body, you realize where it's heading, it is not worth holding on to, right? It's all in there. All that stuff that we don't really want is already part of us. Then you can let go. So this is the idea with this sort of contemplation, to help us to let go and then improve our meditation practice. Let's have a look at the next one. And for the sake of what benefit should a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, often reflect thus: I am subject to illness, I am not exempt from illness. In the state of health, beings are intoxicated with their health, and when they are intoxicated with their health, they engage in misconduct by body, speech, and mind. And when one often reflects upon this theme, the intoxication with health is either completely abandoned or diminished. It is for the sake of this benefit that a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, should often reflect thus: I am subject to illness, I am not exempt from illness. So the same thing again, right? When you are healthy, it often feels like the health will always be there. We forget that health is temporary. Illness, sooner or later, it has to come back again. The nature of the body is to be healthy and then ill, healthy and ill, back and forth, back and forth. And this is where you get that nice story which Ajahn Brahmali always talks about, the story, the story of the person who goes to the doctor, and instead of saying to the doctor, something is wrong with me, doctor, they say to the doctor, something is right with me, doctor, I am sick again today. It is nice, right? Because it is the truth. Something is right with you. You are ill. It is not wrong. This is the nature of the body. And if that's how you feel when you get ill, that nothing is wrong, this is just natural, then of course you are pretty good at doing this particular contemplation. And again, health and illness are two sides of the same coin. Where there is health, there must also be illness. Where there is illness, there must also be health. The word health can only exist if the word illness exists. It doesn't have any meaning if there is no illness. So this again is part of our nature. And again, then the intoxication of health, right? Another intoxication. You start doing stupid things because you forget about the nature of the body, and then you avoid that if you reflect in this way. So now we have the third contemplation, and this is the most important of these five probably, and it goes as follows. And for the sake of what benefit should a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, often reflect thus? I am subject to death, I am not exempt from death. During their lives, beings are intoxicated with life, and when they are intoxicated with life, they engage in misconduct by body, speech, and mind. But when one often reflects upon this theme, the intoxication with life is either completely abandoned or diminished. It is for the sake of this benefit that a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, should often reflect thus: I am subject to death, I am not exempt from death. It is one of the most obvious things in life, is that we are all going to die. It is so obvious. And if you ask people, of course, they always say, yeah, I know I'm going to die. But straight away, when you hear them say that, you know that they don't really know what they're talking about, right? So it is a kind of the superficial answer to a very profound reality. And again, because it is so true, and because it is so real, we need to remind ourselves this again and again and again, so that it actually sinks in a very deep way. And when it sinks in a very deep way, then we abandon this intoxication with life. And this intoxication with life is this feeling that we are here in this world, the world around us, this life is all there is, right? It's very hard to imagine yourself dying and perhaps being reborn somewhere else. This reality is all that has meaning to us. And because this reality is all that has meaning to us, we go out and we desire things in this world. We get angry about things in this world. And this is all part of that intoxication with this particular life. This particular existence cannot takes over and becomes all there is for us. When you remember that you're going to die, right, and the closer that death appears to you, if you remember you're going to die next month, right, perhaps next week, you might die tomorrow, right, you bring it so incredibly close. Now the closer it gets, the less important, the less interesting is the life here and now. If you are going to die very, very soon, what is the point of desiring things in this world? You're not going to plan your next relationship if you're going to die tomorrow, right? You're not going to be angry with people if you're going to die tomorrow. If you're going to die tomorrow, you're going to be cool and peaceful. If people do stupid things, it's their problem. It's none of your business anymore. You're out of here. You're going somewhere else. If they want to be crazy, that's their business. And this is what happens when somebody has lived a good spiritual life, practiced all the right things. And I've seen this sometimes. They are very peaceful when they die because they're able to let go of this world. And because they're letting go of this world, desire and ill will, the two first hindrances, they're almost completely abandoned. And that is the power of the death reflection. Because desire and ill will are usually, almost always, related to this world. If you are leaving this world, these defilements have no place anymore, and you become peaceful, you become at ease, you become relaxed. So for that reason, it's an incredibly powerful reflection. And I would recommend all of you to try the death reflection, to actually abandon these hindrances as a consequence. So how do we do that? And the way that the Buddha explains this elsewhere, he talks about Madana Sati, the recollection of death. He talks about marana sanya, sanya, the perception of death. And the first thing he says is that you never know when you are going to die. It can be just around the corner. There are all these possibilities, right? You walk outside of this tent here, afterwards you stumble somewhere, you fall over, you knock your head in the wrong way, and that's it. Right? Game over, finished. And it can happen so easily. You walk into the street, right? The traffic here in Sri Lanka is pretty rough. The drivers are pretty rough. So you don't know, very quickly somebody can run over you. And that's, again, it's the end, right? It is so easy. There can be an illness inside of you right now. You could have some heart disease. You can have some cancer. Heart disease can take you suddenly like that. You can be gone because of illness, because of heart disease. It can happen so fast, so you never know when your time is up. It is so easy. I know what it's like. You read in the paper, you see that, you see all the death announcements in the paper. This person has died, that person has died, and it never really feels like you. It always feels like somebody else has died. But remember, each one of those could be you. You are no different from them. We feel different, but we're not actually different. We're just the same. And the idea is to allow this to sink into us, to really know that we can actually die, quite literally, at any time. Now, if you can die at any time, you have to be ready now. Now you have to have that feeling inside of you to be ready to die the next moment, perhaps even. Only then does it really work. And this is what the Buddha says, is that the person who practices Maranasati really, really well, he practices in such a way that you are ready to die on the next breath. That's pretty hard, isn't it? Even to try to imagine dying on the next breath, it is actually very difficult to do that. So what you do what you can. Okay, I could die next month, right? That most people can maybe do that. By the way, if you find it very hard to do, some people find it very hard to do death contemplation, maybe for some kind of reason in the past, maybe some kind of karma or some kind of personality trait. If you find it very difficult and it makes you depressed or it makes you sad, then please don't do it. Only if it actually helps you to let go should you do the death contemplation. So you start with something you can do. I could die next month. And then you bring it forward into the present moment, right? As close to you as you possibly can. I could die tomorrow. I could die this evening. And then closer and closer and closer. And then make it real. The whole point here is to make it real. You really have to feel as if you actually really could die tomorrow morning, this evening, or whatever it is. It has to be real. Only when it is real does it actually work. Only then do you become peaceful, and are you're fully able to abandon this world together with desire and aversions that arise on account of this world. So this is how you do this, right? Make it absolutely real. The potential for death is always present. The potential is always there. So bring this to mind. It takes a bit of training, and you have to do this. One of the ways of doing this is to imagine yourself on your deathbed, right? Really imagine yourself on your deathbed. This is the end of your life, and you're lying there. What does it feel like to be on your deathbed? Right? The first thing you might feel is some kind of unhappiness. I'm not ready to die. I've got these things I need to do. So feel that out. What is it that you have to do? And if it has to do with other people, then make sure you sort out any so-called unfinished business. Is kind of one of these popular words. Sort out that unfinished business you might have with others. And then you see that when you do this kind of reflection, right? And then the second thing you do is then you try to do the same reflection again and feeling whether you are able to abandon the defilements in this way. So that is a little bit of the death reflection. And it's quite hard to do. I remembered not long before I came to Sri Lanka from Perth, I visited an old lady. She was in her house. She was dying, and she was staying in her home. She had this big hospital bed in her house, and she was lying on her bed. She could barely speak, right? And it was very obvious that she was dying. She was on the way out. She probably had only a few hours left. That's what it looked like. And it turned out to be true. She died not long after I had left her. But still, she was saying to me, she could barely move, she could barely speak. And she was saying, I hope I will still have a chance to go to the nuns' monastery here. I looked at her, and there's no way you're going to go to the nuns' monastery. But this is denial, right? It is so hard to accept that we're going to die. It is so difficult to accept that. And she said, I'm still a bit afraid of death. So this is the way to help us to overcome that fear as well. This is another aspect of this. Okay, so that is the death contemplation, very powerful. You see the Buddha talking about this in the suttas in so many different places. As always, when the Buddha talks about things in many places, it means it is an important and powerful type of reflection that we all probably should be doing here. So, let us move on to the next one. And for the sake of what benefit should a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, often reflect thus: I must be parted and separated from everyone and everything dear and agreeable to me. Beings have desire and lust in regard to those people and things that are dear and agreeable, and excited by this lust, they engage in misconduct by body, speech, and mind. But when one often reflects upon this theme, the desire and lust in regard to everyone and everything dear and agreeable is either completely abandoned or diminished. It is for the sake of this benefit that a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, should often reflect thus: I must be parted and separated from everyone and everything dear and agreeable to me. So here, in the previous one, we looked at our own death, our own passing away. Here we are, in a sense, looking at the death of everybody else, and in a sense also the death of our belongings, right? The fact that our belongings we must be parted from our belongings. So everything in this world must be we must part from everything in this world eventually. Every relationship we make, every belonging we have, including our own physical body, all of that has to go eventually. At the very latest, it has to happen at death. Very often it happens before that. Everything must go, right? And this is why every time we have some desire, every time we create another attachment to something, we are asking for suffering in the future, because it will have to be separated from us at one stage. And there's a very powerful simile which comes up in the next sutta, so maybe I can say that now. That makes the next sutta a little bit shorter. And that is the simile. The Buddha says that everything in this world, everything is like borrowed goods. Right? Everything is like borrowed goods. So everything we own, our body, our relationship, our status in society, our degrees, right? We have all these degrees. And I know there's one monk here who's studying for another degree, right? And so all these degrees that we have, everything we do, everything, all that we have built up is going to have to go again. Right? So we build up the sense of self around who we think we are, social status, all this kind of thing. It all has to disappear. And the point is, and the way I like to think about this is, say you are renting a car or renting a house. You're going to have that car for maybe a few weeks. You're going to have that house for a few months. You know the house belongs to somebody else, right? You're going to have to give it back again in a few months' time. Now, if the house needs a little bit of refurbishment, it needs a bit of painting here, a bit of fixing there, right? It needs to kind of be, there's many things that need to be done. How much effort, how much of your own money are you going to spend on a house that belongs to somebody else? You might spend a little bit, but not that much, right? If it is your own house, then you might use endless resources. But if it belongs to somebody else and the house is in a bad condition, you probably go to the owner and say, well, you got to fix up your house. The condition is very bad. But you're not going to put in so much effort of your own and so much money of your own. And it's exactly the same thing with these things in this life. All the things we own, all the relationships we have, all the status that we build up for ourselves. How much effort are you going to put into these things, which are just borrowed goods, things that you're going to have to give up at the end of your life at the latest? Are you going to spend everything, all your time, just to invest in these borrowed goods that you're going to have to give up? When you die, you will have nothing. You will be completely naked. Everything will be torn away from you. Absolutely everything. And you will wonder, you will say to yourself, I have wasted my life. I'm not taking anything with me into the future. All these borrowed goods that I've spent all this time building all these things up, now I have to give it up again. And I have nothing. I have nothing left. And you will cry and weep because you feel that you have actually wasted your life. You had the opportunity to build up something for the future, something also for future lives. But you had too narrow, you looked at the world in too narrow a way. All you saw was this life. Most people only see this life, and this is one of the main problems with not having an idea of rebirth. All you see is this life. But once you expand that horizon, and you see that life goes on, life after life after life, your strategy, your way of dealing with the world becomes different. Instead of investing only in this life, you invest in the future in a much, much bigger sense. And that is where the spiritual life comes in. You start becoming generous. Like we saw the other day, unless money is spent in certain ways, it is considered wasted, right? It has not been used in a way that promotes happiness in this life or happiness in the long term in the future. You start becoming kind because you want to develop kindness, you want to develop compassion, qualities of the mind that you can take with you into the future. Things that are not wasted, because the only thing that you take with you from this life into the future is the mind, right? So build a beautiful mind for yourself. Build a bright mind full of good qualities and take that with you instead. Develop the Brahma Viharas. Develop peace and stillness and meditation. That is what life is all about. This is the purpose of life. Everything else is wasted when death arrives. So please remember that. It's an incredibly powerful way of looking at life. I find it so powerful when I read that. And it's a kind of a guiding light. And this is one of the reasons, one of many reasons, but certainly very powerful reasons for living the monastic life, or for living lay life in a wise way. So this is this idea that everything you own must be separated from you, right? Everything dear and agreeable to you. Remember that. Don't waste too much time looking after your body, going to the gym, right? Looking nice and trim, spending in the West now, people spend a lot of time, especially in America, I think, on cosmetic surgery, all this kind of stuff, right? Looking after this body, and then you're going to send it to the funeral place, it's going to burn it up, and all that's left is a pile of ashes. What a waste, right? Remember that. This body is just this temporary thing, and it ends in ashes at the end of the day. Either that or it ends in the coffin and gets eaten by worms. That's one of the nice contemplations in the Satipatthana Sutta. Either way, it's not worth the time and effort. Think of your mind instead, much more important. A beautiful mind is far more valuable than a beautiful body. Okay. Last contemplation. And for the sake of what benefit should a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, often reflect thus: I am the owner of my kamma, the heir of my kamma. I have kamma as my origin, kamma as my relative, kamma as my resort. I will be the heir of whatever kamma, good or bad, that I do. People engage in misconduct by body, speech and mind, but when one often reflects upon this theme, such misconduct is either completely abandoned or diminished. It is for the sake of this benefit that a woman or a man, a householder or one gone forth, should often reflect thus: I am the owner of my kamma, the heir of my kamma. I have kamma as my origin, kamma as my relative, kamma as my resort. I will be the heir of whatever kamma, good or bad, that I do. Our kamma is what gives rise to how the main way that we experience life. Remember, karma, the karma of the past are our intentional actions, and they basically give rise to the feeling tone that we experience in this life. So it's not so much about our personality, but how we experience this life in terms of happy states and bad states. Happiness and suffering basically is created by karma. So this is what karma is all about, and this is why you are the owner of your karma. You will have to reap those feelings in the future, pleasure or pain, depending on what karma you do. And as it says very beautifully in that sutta, in the Kosala Samyutta, as I have mentioned already a couple of times, if you do bad things in this world, it's like you are your own enemy. Right? You are creating suffering for yourself in this life if you do bad things. Every time you say something which is a bit silly, every time you do an action which isn't quite right, every time you think a thought which isn't kind or compassionate, you are in a sense your own enemy because you are creating some suffering for yourself in the future. Do you want to be your own enemy or do you want to be your own friend? If you are your own friend, you do good actions. You are kind by body, speech and mind. That is how you are your own friend. And of course, that is also the way to be friend of other people. So being your own friend and being your friend of others is actually all the same thing. So just by remembering that, please be your own friend. Have metta on yourself. One of the aspects of having metta on yourself is to be a kind and good-hearted person in this world. If not, you don't really love yourself. So if you love yourself, it means you're also kind. So that is that sutta for this afternoon, and I'm going to stop there. We're still working on the right effort. All of these things are about right effort. Just to remind you, it's all about abandoning, especially the defilements of desire and anger, desire and ill will. This is what this is about. And we're going to do at least one more session on that topic before we move on to the next stage of this Noble Eightfold Path. So I will see you again this evening here.